This presentation is on subtracting fractions with the same and different denominators. When the denominators are the same, let's take this question as an example. So we've got 5/6 minus 2/6. Now exactly how it works in we work this out in exactly the same way as we did for adding fractions with the same denominators. So as we can see, both denominators are 6, therefore our denominator remains as 6, and all we do is subtract the numerator. So 5 subtract 2 gives us an answer of 3. Now that can be simplified to 1/2. Another example could be 3/5 subtract 1/5. And again, as we can see, denominator is exactly the same, therefore it stays the same in the answer, and we just subtract one numerator from the other. So 3 minus 1 is 2, and the final answer is 2/5. Moving forward to different denominators. So I will use this question as an example. 4/5 subtract 1/3. So as we can see, our denominators are different. We've got 5 and we've got 3. So we need to find a number that both of those go into. So a common multiple, as it's known. So let's write the question out again. 4/5 minus 1/3. Well, I know the number that both of these go into is 15, or one of the numbers both of them go into is 15, and to get from 5 to 15 I multiply that by 3. Therefore I also need to do that to the numerator. 4 multiplied by 3 is 12, 3 multiplied by 5 is 15, therefore 1 multiplied by 5 is 5, and because the denominators are exactly the same, then I need to write the same denominator for the answer. 12, and then subtract the numerators. 12 subtract 5 is 7, and the final answer is 7/15. As I showed you in the previous video, there is another way. So for example, if the fraction was 1/4 subtract 2/8, well, I know I can multiply this 4 to make it 8, and therefore I can use one of the denominators. So I will keep them as 8 to make this fraction, to make this denominator go from 4 to 8, multiply it by 2. Therefore I also need to multiply the numerator. This will work. As I showed you in the previous video, there is another way depending on the nature of the question. So for example, if I had 3/4 subtract 2/8, I can use one of the denominators, that being 8, because I can multiply this one by 2. 4 times by 2 is 8, and therefore 3 times by 2 is 6. This one here stays exactly the same, and because I've got the same denominators, I'm going to use that for my answer, and then subtract the numerator. So 6 subtract 2 gives me an answer of 4, which when simplified would be half.